we have a quorum for that, for the presentations. Yeah. So, welcome back. I know it's a very hectic session and we are discussing some very critical things. Families, because when you're talking about youth, they are actually in your household. So these are things that are really, really very close to our hearts. So it's important that we really spend time on them. So at this point in time, I want to invite the chair of this session, Anthony Kioko, who is the CEO of the Cereal Growers Association, who will take charge of this particular session. So welcome, Anthony.
Good afternoon. If you can see me, just wave it back at me. Thank you. And Paul, you better assure me that the attendance is going to be better than this. I don't know, planned that I will be chairing the last session, but all the same, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. My name is Kioko Anthony, like Paul has mentioned. I am the CEO at the Cereal Growers Association, and many of us may have heard of the name, some may not have. But short of it is that Cereal Growers Association is a national member organization of cereal farmers, both large and small. Started 28 years ago. We're based here in Nairobi, but we have a couple of field offices across the country. Currently, we have programs and activities across 32 counties in the country, working with just over 600,000 farmers. And we do many things, but largely themed around 4 areas. The first one being policy advocacy, which is everything to do with representing the farmer interest at policy level. And we also support farmers in technology access or technology transfer, and then we also, as a third thing, work across business linkage services, and finally information. So that's what we are. I'm saying these few things as I give more of our colleagues time to make their way back into the room and to take their seats. But then also to point out that since yesterday we've truly been blessed with great presentations, brilliant presentations, and I've been talking to people because I've been here since the beginning, and many, even those who are seasoned workshop participants, agree that this has been 2 days of extremely high level, high quality presentations. And talking to one of the presenters in the morning, I said, I hope we shall have a way of getting these presentations, or at least the messages that are being drawn out of them, to the necessary officers or the people that need to hear this and take the necessary action. Finally, I know that we've been talking about resilience in one way or the other, and we started actually by the same, where Kevin told us about resilience in food systems, and he did explain it so well. Now we want to scale it down to the household level. And again, I was talking to my brother, Dr. Mwenda, and I was joking with him because he's an old friend, and I told him yesterday he chaired a session in the afternoon after people had had lunch, and a lot of the people seem to agree with themselves a lot. And so I told him I'm lucky that I will be able to, when in the morning we were, trying to negotiate that we can wind up this before lunch. I told him today I'm luckier. Seems that I spoke too soon. So I still have to deal with an afternoon audience. But you look brighter. You're not like yesterday's team. Excellent. So in getting us going, we have a couple of presentations. And I must warn you, actually promise you, that we're going to really try to make this quick so that we will not be very much away from the time that we had set ourselves. And that means that the 3 great presenters who are coming to talk to us now they are already pre-warned that instead of 15 minutes, they are going to have to do their presentations in 10 minutes. The only challenge is that they do not leave out the juiciest parts of their presentations. And so let's please get to appreciate them as they come up. We have 3 of them, like I've mentioned. Let me just reconfirm. Here we've got Dr. John Olwanda. We've already heard from him yesterday. And he's going to be giving our first presentation, speaking about livelihood diversification. Is that correct? And so, please, your 10 minutes, Daktari, start now.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for this opportunity of 10 minutes to present what I had prepared to present in 15 minutes. Oh, great. So I'm going to present on livelihood diversification among rural farm households in Kenya. I'm doing this presentation on behalf of my colleagues, Lilian Kirimi, who is here, and Nicholas Odhiambo. 10 minutes may be few. If I'm cut short, remember this. This is the key takeaway from this message. 1, diversification of livelihood strategies we found is the norm of majority of rural farm households rather than an exception. Number 2, households diversify differently, and this is driven by factors that perhaps are influencing their capacity to take advantage of opportunities in those diversification strategies. So there is heterogeneity in diversification among households. Those are the 2 key takeaways of this presentation. Diversification of livelihood strategies has been found to be important. While increasing income, they also reduce vulnerability of household to economic shocks. Studies have found that. And this is especially important for households in low and middle income countries. And into diversification, households could be pulled by emerging opportunities of the farm, or they can be pushed into diversification of farm due to or because of little opportunities on the farm. So it is important to understand how farm households diversify and the enabling factors that can help inform efforts at expanding opportunities for livelihood opportunities, rather for livelihoods to different categories of households. 4 questions on this analysis. We wanted to understand how diversified these rural farm households are in terms of their livelihood strategies, and the relative was in Gishu, Kisumu, Siaya, and then West Pokot, Baringo, and then when you come to the drier areas of Nyeri and Marsabit, and then Garissa. So data included on 45 households that were randomly picked from common interest groups that were dealing with specific value chains. Agriculture. This graph shows the share of households that are participating in livelihood strategy and the share of those strategies in household income. What we found is that on-farm activities, that is primary agricultural production, is key for these rural households, as you can see here, contributing to over at least 50% of household income on average, and 98% of these households were in agriculture. But then we also found that they also rely significantly on on-farm activities for income. So it means half of the income of these households come from off-farm. Which livelihood strategies are most important for various groups of households? We partitioned, rather categorized, this household into income quintiles using the computed income from what they reported from the agricultural production and off-farm activities. And then we categorized them into 5 equal groups, and we wanted to see how they diversify. So we find that on-farm activities decline in importance in high income households. This is the fifth quintile here. These are the number of people that are engaged, households that are engaged in agriculture. You see, it's quite high, almost, we saw the average was 98%. But when it comes to now, the share of income that comes from agriculture, it reduces as you move from lower income household to higher income households, where in higher income households, it is 36%. But in the poorest group of households, agriculture accounts for 70%. So non-agricultural wage and non-farm self-employment are more important for households in the highest income group. You see here, accounting for 38%, that is non-agricultural wage, and 22%, that is non-farm self-employment. But when you come to the lowest income group, non-agricultural wage accounts for only 10% of income of the household, while self-employment or farm accounts for 13%. Looking at that information by gender, we found that non-agricultural wage and non-farm self-employment are more important in male-headed compared to female-headed households, while on-farm activities were more important in female-headed households compared to the male-headed households. And that one you can see here. This is male-headed households, and these are female-headed households. Female-headed households got 53% of their income from on-farm, while for male it was only 49%. But when it comes to non-farm income activities, we see a smaller share of income from off-farm activities in female-headed households compared to male-headed households. Now when we look at also age category of the household head, we see here that households headed by persons that are less than 35 years of age, that is this group, they got 40% of their income from on-farm activities, while those that are above 35 years got 51% from on-farm activities. So younger households are getting more income from off-farm activities compared to older households. That resonates with what we had before. These younger people are more into non-farm activities than on-farm activities. But what are these non-farm self-employment activities that we are talking about here, that people in rural households engage in? We found out that the most common was retail shop or kiosk business, and boda came as number 2, that is transport. Building and construction, again, this is an area that is dominated mainly by the youth. So you see that the informal activities in the rural areas are very important in terms of supporting the livelihoods of these households here. And this should trigger us to start thinking about, when we consider border business, for example, are people pushed into it or are they pulled into it, especially the young people? Look at how the frequency is here. And then the retail shop and kiosk businesses are also important. So what kind of activities of farm are lucrative in the rural areas? And what can we promote there? So what about non-agricultural wage employment? Which are they? We found that most of the households engage in general casual work in the category of non-agricultural wage employment activities. This general casual work include the daily kibaruas of the farm and some other activities associated with that. We found out that quite a high percentage were teachers in the rural areas. Of course, drivers were there. So this teaching and police that are security sector and public administration. These are public mainly. And so the public sector is very important as off-farm employment sector for rural households as at this time. Then the question that we should ask, how can we stimulate private sector investment in the rural areas to also play a very important role in providing employment opportunities to those households? How do then households combine livelihood strategies? Here we found that poorer households are less diversified. As you can see here, the number of livelihood strategies that they engage in is fewer compared to those that the higher income households engage in. So you see, as you progress from the poorest to the wealthiest group of households, the number increases. But when you look at the combinations of those, you realize that for the households that are relying on-farm only as a source of their income, the proportion increases. The proportion increases from the wealthiest group to the poorest group. So among the poorest group, 54% rely only on-farm activities for their income, compared to only 5% among the wealthiest group. But then when we look at combination of on-farm plus non-agricultural wage, on-farm plus non-farm self-employment, and on-farm plus non-agricultural wage plus non-farm self-employment, we see the proportion of households increasing from the wealthiest to, from the poorest to the wealthiest, as you combine more and more income earning activities. So it tells us then that diversification here is associated with the higher income, and these are for the reasons that we are also going to see just in the next few slides. So poorer households are less diversified, and majority rely on only on-farm activities for income. So when we want to talk about poverty reduction, where should we focus on? That's a question that I'm not going to answer, but the answer will come from us all. Now, we are looking at the same information, but now differentiating the households by gender and by age. These figures here tell us that diversification is less inclusive for women-headed households. Look at the proportion of female-headed households in on-farm only is higher than for female-headed households. But when you look at combination of on-farm and other income earning strategies, you see that the proportion of female-headed households is lower compared to the proportion of male-headed households. It means that male-headed households are more diversified. Youth are also diversifying, but they are diversifying more into non-farm self-employment, as I indicated, and here you can see it very more clearly that 54% of those that are households that are headed by 35 years and above heads combine on-farm and non-farm self-employment. But there are fewer in the on-farm plus non-agricultural wage. So quite more youth are going into self-employment compared to non-agricultural wage employment and also on-farm earning activities. 2 minutes remaining. We did some regression here, and we got what is really the correlation between household attributes and engagement, or the probability of participation in these different combinations of livelihood strategies. I'm going to summarize them in the next slide. Conclusion, 1, diversification of livelihood strategies is the norm rather than an exception among these rural farm households. As you can see here, these are all that they engage in. And the share of non-farm activities in household total income is significant for majority of these households. Then it tells us we need to promote non-farm income earning opportunities. But there are some people that are rely solely on farm, and those are the poorest, and they need to be looked after. This is just conclusion, but I want to go to, yes, this one here. The factors that are attributed to this diversification. We found that, education is key to diversification into non-agricultural wage employment. This was emphasized by the panel that was talking about youth employment. They need skills. Number two, we found that access to credit appears to facilitate non-farm self-employment. We found that those people that were engaged in non-farm self-employment had access to credit compared to those that didn't engage in that. And we also have found that diversification of farm is less inclusive for women-headed households, while the youth are diversifying more into non-farm self-employment. I think I've said that, and I want to stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you be on our feet as we give Daktari one factorial? On your feet, on your feet, on your feet, on your feet. I want to kill two birds with one stone. One factorial, excellent. Were you in? I know you may not have listened, but I know you will do such. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Those are two different things, listening and hearing and listening. Yeah. So where's mine? Tech people. Where's my presentation? Or I just use, maybe I just use Jones. So as he does what he's doing, the presentation I'm going to give emanates from a recent, I don't know whether to call it movement, but thinking, maybe that's a better word, around vision for adapted crops and soils. So there is a rethink that maybe in Africa, but certainly elsewhere, our food systems, if you like, are based on very few staples. And that's not a good thing. That does not encourage resilience. So Africa is a very diverse place in terms of, thank you. Africa is a very diverse place in terms of biodiversity, farming systems. There are a lot of food items, crops that used to be the mainstay of local food systems, but they're not there anymore. That's not a good thing. So the thinking is that's not a good thing. Let's reverse that and make it as diverse as the genetic, biodiversity, and agroecological systems of Africa allow. So that's what I'm going to talk about here, because vision is based on the notion that that's the way you can get resilience. So I will just do thought experiments with you on how that can happen. How can you actually build a very diverse farming and food system by going back to, if you like, traditional crops, indigenous crops, neglected crops, orphan crops. But you can scratch all those words. They don't want to use those words. They think that's too negative. So instead, call them opportunity crops. So the thought experiment will be to look at various policy pathways that can get us there. To the CGIR in some form or fashion, you may have seen this. So that vision actually captures what the CG is all about, to get all these good things to happen. So you can't get all these good things to happen unless you build a robust food system and beyond. In the CG, we like to think of our impact partners, innovations, capacity development, and policy. So today, I will focus on this, just as a way of thought experiment. This is a quote I think captures something that you will see quite a lot in a lot of policy strategy documents in public sector ministers of agriculture. The rhetoric is usually very, very good. You can't argue with the rhetoric. Pick any policy document from any of our countries in the region, and you can't disagree with what's being said in there. And this is a statement from Zimbabwe Small Grain Strategy, small grains or traditional grains. It says they want to revitalize these grains because that way you can help to prevent or alleviate food insecurity and nutrition insecurity in the face of climate change, mobilizing the power of plant genetic resources and reversing non-communicable diseases. I think, was it Lillian who was talking about this? I think a number of speakers, too. So a lot of good things. However, the point is, how do you get there? The African Development Bank has recognized this in one of their early reports in 2015, where they talk about, I'm trying to twist my neck. Maybe let me see if I can get a pointer. Where they talk about sorghum millets, and they're basically saying there's need to make investments in maize to match those in sorghum, palm millet, and finger millet. So it's a very bold statement that was made 9 years ago. You could happily say they were ahead of their time. So for African Development Bank to say that, I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing because they are African Development Bank, so their agenda setting capability is quite high, at least higher than mine. Anyway, so what are some of the impact opportunities and the implied policy directions there? Look at the consumption of millet, both pearl and finger, across Africa. It seems to be concentrated in the Sudano-Sahelian area. These countries here with green and dark and blues, which show higher levels of per capita consumption over the decades. The rest of Africa is kind of hovering in the low single digits, or low double digits. But you could call that glass half full, or glass 10% full. Pick your choice. That's an opportunity. Why? I like to say this is an opportunity because it gives you residual consumption on which you can build that vision we were talking about. Okay? So the fact that the so-called traditional crops, orphan crops, please scratch that, opportunity crops, are consumed in some places with quite high per capita, and in the rest of the continent, almost everywhere you find something, it means you can build on that. It provides you with a foundation. I don't know how strong that foundation is, but it is a foundation. I think this is just another way of saying the same thing, so let me not belabor the point. It just says that, you know, in Western Africa is this epicenter of production, epicenter of consumption, and then that reduces quite a bit as you come to East and Southern Africa. The other opportunity is that already there are strong community networks in seed systems for these crops, and therefore you already have a system. You already have a system that you can work with. So if you're going to begin to revitalize these crops with new genetics, you already have community-based systems that are millennia old that you can work with. Because in the communities, these seed banks or varieties or farmers share seeds. So it's how do you work with them to bring new genetics? So it's just about injecting new genetics into these systems and improving agronomy, improving the rate of use of new genetics. So yeah, so that's one opportunity. The policy implication there is don't break it if it is not broken. So if informal seed systems are not broken or serving certain purposes, don't interfere with it. The only interference is plug it in so that it can get the flow of new genetics, new crops, productivity increases, et cetera, et cetera. This other one talks about diet and diversification. I think this is preaching to the choir. So let me not do this because on the left side, food insecure have very low levels of food diversification, and you see a little bit of diversification across cereals and legumes for the food secure. So don't ask me the causation, direction of causation there. But so then, if you want to deal with nutrition, of course, so that prevents you an opportunity to bring on board a lot of other things, including narrowing the reliance on maize here in Eastern and Southern Africa. In West Africa, I think their staple reliance on one thing is less than here, especially the coastal areas, yam, cassava, maize. But here, it's usually just maize. So that's an opportunity. It's a problem, but it's an opportunity. If you want to tackle diet and nutrition, that's the way to go. You must bring then back crops that are struggling, as we've said. The other one is, tackling food costs. If by diversification you can tackle food costs, it will do us a great deal of good. Why? Because up to 50%, I'm sure sometimes even more, households spend up to 50% of their incomes on food. If you could cut this down by what you do in challenging environments where they rely on dryland crops or the so-called neglected crops, and all of a sudden food production becomes a little bit less strenuous, less costly, then you can bring down the cost of food, increase supply because there's diversified. If I can't eat maize, I can get cassava. If I don't have cassava, I can have maize mixed with cassava and millet. I'll come to consumer issues just shortly. However, if that diversification allows consumers to have slightly more elastic demand across the board, it means if something is really happening in the maize sector, there's a chance you could substitute, even through trade. You could bring in other items into the equation, and that helps with lowering the cost of food. If you could lower this, I mean, a lot of people in Africa spend so much money on just food. If you could bring this down by a half, imagine the macroeconomic impacts that can bring. So I think there is opportunities to work on proper analytics. I say something here in blue, policy and programming. So I will say this, and if my time is up, I will go away, is that we tend to, oh really? But I started late because that guy didn't have my, so this requires data investment analytics to support actions. I think this is what we need to do instead of lamenting how we don't have policies. I think policies are there. Statements of intent are there. I've just showed you FDB as an example. I just showed you the Zimbabwe example. I'm sure if you just randomly pick a lot of the policy, STGS in Kenya, you'll find something that conforms with this, I'm sure, or some other document. So then what's needed is not that the government or public sector has not provided a positive rhetorical framework, but what has not happened is that those of us who like to point fingers at the government have not provided innovative programming solutions to the existing policies. Have we? I don't think we have. Have we? So we stand accused, so I'm accusing myself and then adding you into that accusatory. For good reason, because I don't see it. But if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong. Please show me innovative programming based on good investments in data and analytics, which says, yes, you have a traditional grain strategy with, here's an innovative investment program we've thought about. If you're working in Zimbabwe, for example, or just here, you're struggling with your flour blending policy for some time, here's an innovative way to unlock that policy into action. Have we done that other than lamenting that we don't have policies? The reason I say this is because the policy space is full of very tricky political economy issues. Very few of us here have the mandate to do policy for good reason. There must be somebody who owns that space. It's not, maybe some of us here are. I'm not. So when will you change it? I mean, it's a very political process that has to be negotiated by necessity. So if you focus on that, it will be a decade before you do anything. Do you want that? While in the meantime, you actually have positive statements of intent in all the various documents that you can use to innovate appropriate programming. I think let me skip this because, and then just go here. So this, if we're going to bring consumers along in this journey of a diversified food system, where one staple is not the food, so if you don't have that ugali or whatever it is, you say, I didn't eat. If you are Menale, you didn't have your injera, you start saying, I didn't eat. No, if you are somebody else, you say, oh, I didn't have ugali, I didn't eat. No, that shouldn't be the case. But that requires innovative, as I was saying, innovative programming. What about this? So maybe is this something to think about? Could we be looking at this, but also forgetting that a lot of the alternative crops are suffering from low aspirational value perception in the minds of consumers. So as you work on the agronomy, productivity, genetics, what about the consumer? Because if the consumer has no interest, the farmer will lose interest. So I don't have answers to this, but it's something to perhaps think about. And this is a long conversation, so let me conclude it. I think going forward, the international community, including people sitting in this room, we could think of about four different areas where we focus on lowering costs to farmers, producers, and consumers through genetics, resource efficiency across the board. Okay, so if farmers find the new crops easy to grow, consumers find them cost efficient to buy, and they like to eat it, the previous slide, I think we will be on our way. Optimize investments across major cereals and others, as the FDB was saying. Redouble efforts in soil health. So you also can't go there. You can't talk about productivity when soil health is suffering. And then we could leverage consumer trends and nutrition and health awareness. So maybe this is the place to do the aspirations. The young people, the future generations might want to take this on, but how do you do that? Innovative feeding school feeding programs, perhaps? A lot of us don't like white cabbages because that's what you had when you went to boarding school. So what have we learned over those decades of school feeding? If you force a monotonous diet on young minds, you're ruining their future perceptions on these crops. So diversification, if they don't have a monotonous diet, diversified, well-prepared, innovatively well thought out, they might grow up saying, wow, we had a great time when we were in school. They used to provide us with really great tasting finger millet uji. And when they grow up, they prepare it at home, and their children will like it too. So that's me pontificating. See what you make out of it. Thank you very much. Did I take 10 or 12 minutes?
Don't worry, you are done. Don't worry. Thank you. So the final presenter in that series is going to be Dr. Mercy Kamau. Again, she was here. Yeah, I'm glad that you're coming so that she would not have an excuse why she's taking extra time. And did you appreciate Dr. Marenya? No. Please, could we do so? One Factorio. Ah, good. No, if you do it before I say it, that's not official.
So good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to share another piece of work that we've been... Is the wrong one? Hey, Anthony, this is not my fault. This is John's presentation. Lillian can see, and I'm wearing glasses. There. There. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm here to present a piece of work that we've been working on at Tegemeo. Doing this on behalf of a larger team comprising myself, Lillian, Hillary, who's seated there, and Professor Bradford Mills from Virginia Tech. The work has been sponsored by USAID through UC Davis, the MRR, the Market Risk and Resilience Innovation Lab, and we got through that initiative. So we were looking at, we looked at the impact of agro-weather advisories in Kenya. And the background is that there is increasing variability on the onset of the rains, the length of the seasons, incidence of extreme temperatures, which renders the tried and tested sources of farmers information on what to do, rainfall patterns, the cropping calendars becoming less reliable and less useful for decision making. And this is just an example. So the work that we did is at the ward level, that is at the local level, at the ward level. And this is just an example from one of the wards in Nyeri, that's Gakawa ward, just showing us the variability. High interannual variability that, within from 1990 to 2020, you can see a lot of variability in the annual rainfall, high annual interannual variability. And then here you just see at the ward level, the same ward, variability in the onset, the start of the season. You can see that high variability. And then also the length of the season. This is the length of the season. This is just one of the wards. So, the onset of the rain signals when you start planting, and so that variability makes it really difficult to plan or even select the variety of crop that you're going to grow. And then short seasons, of course, always add up to a drought or inadequate watering of the crops during critical periods. And so dependable information on these variables or these factors would be really useful and is critical, it's needed. So science-based climate information system services have the potential to empower the farmers, and it can help farmers mitigate risks and enhance their resilience to climate change, because they'll be aided in making adaptive and operational decisions that can help them maximize economic gains or during a good season or minimize losses in a bad season. But though it's widely accepted or talked about, climate information services, little is known, particularly in our part of this world, little is known about the effect or the impact at the farmer level. So we're here to talk about agro-weather intervention was a component of the Kenya Climate Smart project, is a World Bank, Government of Kenya funded project that just ended, I think that was 2023. And in that intervention, they delivered situation-specific climate information through localization that was at the ward level, and the information was relevant to the farming enterprises. It was high frequency relative to what we have known before, and was readily shared, accessible because it was shared using a tool, just the basic phone, and it was timely because it was coming at the time that you need that information. That was the idea. And the messages were transmitted in the farmers' preferred language. Of course, many of them said Swahili, others said English. Very few were getting it in the local language. And it was specific to the value chain and the stage of growth of the crop or the life cycle of the livestock. At the beginning of our end, we leveraged the project's baseline. That means we didn't need to collect the baseline. We only worked on collected for this project, but Segemeo did collect the baseline. But we, in this project, only collected the endline, conducted an endline survey, and by that time, they had provided these agro-weather advisories for 3 cropping seasons. And according to KSAP's documents, M&E framework and M&E documents, there was an expected increase in farmers' access to the advisories, farmer adoption of teams, that is technology, innovations, and market practices, and increased in productivity. Yeah? So those were the expected outcomes. And so what we did, or what we have done, is the research objective is to assess the impact of exposure to action-based weather agro-weather advisories to farmers' adoption of technologies, innovations, and management the teams by comparing outcomes in households that received the SMSs with agro-weather advisories to households that did not. That was the control. So the empirical strategy, we've tried several things, but what I'm going to present today is results from, first of all, the treatment effects estimator, influenced by whether farmers were assigned to the program randomly or not, and whether they complied to what they were assigned for. But what we found is non-compliance and also endogeneity. Farmers were not randomly assigned to the KSAP to receive these agro-weather advisories. So we have used the fixed effects instrument variable approach. That is a conversation in a different forum, but that one considers that farmers did not, decision to participate was not random, and it's suitable where there's partial compliance, either farmers may not have received advisories, or maybe they ignored it or deleted the message, or the messages were crowded out by spam messages on their phones, or farmers who received it did not heed the advice, right? It also controls for unobservables. So the findings. So what we found is that that farmers' access to agro-weather information increased, yeah, because of that method of, providing that, using that, we call it a digital transmission of agro-weather advisories. So we found 29% more farmers. So I'm going to present information that shows how much more those farmers who accessed advisories compared to the others who did not. So 29% more farmers received these agro-advisories, right? There were other sources. For example, farmers still receive from the Kenya Met Department, we got 28%, and there's farmers who said radio, that's from different sources, so there's still some. But because of that, that service by Carro was the implementer, we see nearly 30% farmers more. The graphs that I'm going to show just a few of them, but we start with looking at the adoption of a team. I've said what the team is, and we'll look at indigenous chicken, we'll look at Irish potatoes if we get time. We might go to another value chain, but maybe not, because Anthony is right here in front of me, looking at me. So here we have a 0. This 0 represents no effect. So upward is a positive effect, and lower, downward is a negative effect. We have combined in one slide two teams. So the teams were categorized according to their purpose. So they are feeding-related teams, and they are breeding-related teams, and the others that I'll show. The agro-weather information is this blue chart here, agro-weather information. And in KSAP, there was also another component, another intervention of a micro project grant that was given to the groups that the farmers belong to. We controlled for that, or we included it in our model just to see the different effects of those two. We have wealth, and then we have shocks. We have the shocks. But I'm going to concentrate on these two, if you allow me, the effect of the agro-weather information and the micro project grant. On this side is, I want to concentrate on this model. These are two models, but please allow me, because of limited time, to concentrate on this. This is a model where we included a negative rainfall shock. So here we see that, the effect on adoption of at least one feeding team. We see a high increase in terms of the proportion of farmers that adopted at least a team in feeding, but we see a negative here on the micro project. On breeding, we see also there a positive effect by the agro-weather information, a negative there. Yeah, a negative there. I'll go to the next one, but so keep your eye on these two bars, please. On pest and disease management teams, we see also a positive adoption, positive there, an increase in farmers adopting at least one team. But we also see, you'll also see that this is a wealth index, wealth adoption being related, an increase in adoption as a result of wealth. And then we also looked at the number of teams adopted, the number of teams. Remember, we have a group of teams that are related to feeding. We see an increase in feeding teams as a result of wealth, but the agro-weather information did not have any effect on the number of teams. We don't also see it there, but we see the micro credit, the micro project. The micro project was not, it was credit, but it was given to the household, to the group, and it enabled farmers to access extension service and also to purchase inputs. So you can see there a positive effect, but wealth playing a big role there in terms of increasing the number of teams adopted by farmers. The indigenous, yes, on pests and diseases, we see wealth and the micro project also having a positive effect. We don't see any effect by agro-weather information. Besides, teams related to information, the way information is related to the farmers, including apps. So we see still the micro project grant having a positive effect and wealth having a positive effect. We don't see the blue, the dark blue. We don't see it there, means it had no effect on the number of teams adopted. Let me skip that value chain. I think that slide was not to be there. It comes later. In the Irish potato value chain, we see that the agro-weather advisories had a negative effect, lowered, a lowering effect. The farmers who received agro-weather advisories, there were fewer of them adopting the propagation compared to those who did not receive. But you see wealth really increasing, causing an increase there in terms of how many, the proportion of farmers receiving, adopting the teams. In pests and diseases, the same. This is the indigenous potato value chain. having that effect, but you see the agro-weather advisory there on pest and diseases. Probably farmers, we see that negative. So we're not too sure what's going on there. We expected an increase, but probably farmers are getting more information on what they should use and what they shouldn't use, and following those instructions. You see the number of teams, the wealth really showing, coming up clearly, that wealth really still does play an important role in adoption of technologies, even in cases where we find that farmers have been provided with a grant, they can access they can purchase inputs using that grant, they can get extension service using that grant. We still see wealth playing an important role in adoption of technologies and innovations. Still, we see, remember this one is what I say is agro-weather advisories. We see a negative there. We see no effect of agro-weather advisories there. We see just wealth and also the micro-project grant not having a significant effect. So, yeah, so this is just showing that in this value chain, we saw an increase in productivity in the Irish potato value chain as a result of agro-weather advisories. However, the micro-project grant, we see farmers having lower yields than those who got that grant. Let me skip the dairy value chain and go to the summary. Okay, so we say that's just what I said, that variability is not good for farmers, and dependable information on probability on the onset of dates and length of the growing season is really critical for farmers. And then we're also saying, okay, I didn't really get into it because of time constraint, but beyond rainfall variability, the farmers, most of the farmers in that area, in the areas where the KESA project was, experienced rainfall shocks, negative rainfall shocks to be specific. A few of them did receive positive, but negative rainfall shock was experienced, and it had an effect. We didn't get into that, but it's there in our upcoming brief that will be posted on our website soon. So CalRO's intervention caused an increase in farmers' access to weather information, agro-weather advisories, and significant effect on the impact on adoption of teams in some value chains, but not all. Let me say that we studied more value chains than the ones I have shown there, many more, well, not too many more, like 7 of them. They'll be there in the report that will be coming up soon. The ones that I have shown show a clear indication that the effect was mixed, and maybe that's something to look into. And then the lack of effect on productivity on indigenous chicken, we think that there were deaths and fatalities due to partial or lack of adoption of teams wholly. So particularly on pests and diseases, you see farmers, from our qualitative work, we found that farmers lost a lot of their chicken in the KSAP groups. And I think wealth is still very important in adoption, even where you find that you're giving a microcredit grant, wealth is still playing a key role in that. But I also wanted to say that the microcredit grant was to enable farmers to be able to purchase the inputs and that they were being advised. But you still find that in some areas there was a negative effect, like farmers who got a microcredit grant had lower yields or lower adoption. And we think that this is because of targeting, KSA project targeting. They purposefully targeted areas that were poorer. And the data the baseline data shows that the farmers were less educated. Dwellings showed that they were poorer, and they had fewer income generating activities. Of course, the rainfall shock was important. The negative rainfall shock is still a factor in farmers a factor in farming. So we need to consider that, even though we are providing agro-weather advisories, that they are not enough. We're still finding that shocks are still affecting productivity and production. So I think what I want to say here is, why was the effect not as envisioned? We found that the advisories were very generic. They're very generic, and also farmers appear to have been aware of some of the teams, and probably even have used them and discarded them. So there was indiscriminate promotion of teams without really considering what the farmers already know and what they have disposed. And then after they have learned and are interested in a team, for example, a drought-tolerant variety, the other challenges will kick in, those ones related to accessibility to seed and also low quality, for example, as an example. Recommendation for implementation of these programs, CIS-related, I would say, or any other development, we need a feedback loop we think is very important, and interacting with farmers intensely. So incorporating feedback loops and encouraging farmers to read or to respond to the messages that you're sending to them is a good way, as opposed to a one-way messaging. The messages, of course, the messaging and the resolution could be improved for greater impact, and we think close monitoring to know whether farmers, what farmers think about, and it is related to the feedback loop, is important during implementation. But lastly, we think that interrogating that pathway, how exactly do the climate information services influence farmers' decisions? We don't think we were able to see that, because the pathway expected was farmers get the information, they adopt their thinking is, their capacity is improved, and they choose the teams that they will adopt, and then we see that in terms of productivity increases. Thank you so much. I just want to appreciate the funding from USAID through the MRR UC Davis. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you. That's not official. You wait until I say so. So, again, let's appreciate her just freely as you've done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Daktari. So, to wrap up this session, I want to call up on stage some two great professionals that I've known for many years now. Joyce, please, should be on your feet. And I believe Henry is also around. Please come up on stage. We're going to have a short panel discussion, which is going to be the closure of this session. Yeah, so I'll probably just give them 30 seconds to introduce themselves so that we can get to know them. You don't have to believe what I said about them. Let them say it themselves, then we can make a choice on whether to believe or not.
Good afternoon. My name is Joyce Mutua. I'm currently the CEC. I have been in the agricultural sector for a while now, particularly in the dairy sector, because I'm a dairy professional. My lecturers are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
My name is Henry Mololo from the National Drought Management Authority. Regarding resilience, I've been there properly every single day for 5 years. But before then, I was in the other business. We talked in the morning of value chain development and business call to action. So that's why I was keen why we are moving so fast without necessarily saying what is wrong with those ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Well, you still have the mic because you really look resilient. So I can as well ask you a question.
Okay.
For the benefit of these great participants, just a question around, because you've listened to a lot of these and you've been there for 5 years. So in your view, Henry, what will be the key challenges in building the resilience of farming households? It's been mentioned a bit, but I want to hear it from you. What are the key challenges in building the resilience of farming households, especially in the ASAL areas? And then what sort of strategies do you think hold some promise in addressing or overcoming those challenges?
Okay, those are two in one, so probably I deal with each at a time. And let me contextualize the whole issue of household or community resilience by saying two things. All of us here purport to be resilient probably because we have a check by the end of the month. You withdraw that, and I'm not sure how many of us will survive for another 6 months. That's number one. So are we resilient? For sure. And secondly, luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. So we need those two so that you can be able to move to the next level. Having said that, we have a number of challenges. I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'll try to summarize.
2 minutes.
Okay, so then I focus on two. I have 5, but I'll mention 2. And I think the one problem we've had, and especially the work we are doing, is poor targeting. If you work with the wrong people, if you go collecting data, asking the wrong questions, of course you get the wrong outcomes. So we must transport those who are in transit. I've been around, and you go to the bus station and you are being told, let's go, but actually you have arrived. So this Makanga is talking to the wrong person. So we must identify these communities, these households who are in transit, and then it will be very easy for us to move with them. So targeting becomes key. And secondly is a word I'm trying to create, siloization, silos. I think we have refused to break these walls. We want to protect our small spaces, and within those small spaces, we think that we can come up with our innovations. That actually is what has happened with this value chain business call to action, and all that. People are trying to come up with buzzwords that can make them relevant, forgetting that alone, if you can do it alone, it can't be big. And resilience building is a big one. So we must work together and break those walls. I will stop there with regard to the challenges and probably answer the second part of the question. Then what? And I have one slide. Where is my friend? We talked. I have one slide that I wanted to talk about, so I hope it will come on board. If not, it's okay. And this slide is about rationality. In building resilience, we really must think the economics of it. We must think the money. Nobody is allergic to money. Even the poor we serve, they can see money. They can understand money when they see it. And they will work. They don't need this hand-holding and support if they can appreciate the economic value. So all our interventions must, is it coming? Must be having a commercial orientation and economic orientation. Those who cannot move there, then let them go to social, what is it called? Social support. There are these programs to support those who can't move. But we cannot keep our farmers on diapers forever. It is not going to be tenable. Lastly, is about change of perception. We talk of public sector, private sector, and farmers. I've always wondered, which sector is this one called farmers? Eventually, I have concluded that these guys we don't want to categorize anywhere. It is the single largest private sector in Africa. By resources, talk of land, by labor, it is the single largest. So then we must sit on the same table as equals in business, not inviting them as sufferers to come and tell them what we want to do to help them out. And at that point, I will finish up with this slide, whereby I'm saying we must motivate commercialization. That's a very small farm, but before the farm there is a seed packet there of sunflower, That seed packet went into growing only 1 acre of sunflower. The productivity was very low, about 0.2. Potential is about 1 ton, but this person got 0.2. And it took them 4 months to get a presser, somewhere to press that sunflower. But eventually they got it. They got some crude oil there. You can see it, it's about 40. Each of those jerrycans is 25 liters, so combined is about 40. They gave those 2 jerrycans 2 weeks to settle, and after that they got that first jerrycan there. That is how the product looked. Just settling. You have not done anything. Then they went ahead to consult a food scientist on how can I refine this oil without having to add things and, So they were told, okay, just heat it to about 110 degrees for about 10 minutes. Sprinkle flour and let it settle for another 48 hours. So that is the experiment. Eventually there were comparisons. The first glass on the left is olive oil. You can see how it looks. The middle is this guy, and the far end is a fresh fry. There's a brand called Fresh Fry. So the color is comparable, and this guy went ahead to refine the entire 40 liters and test cooked some eggs to eat. And this guy is me. This guy is me. In the video, I have what I'm calling the golden nature drops. And all I'm saying is, can it be done? Now, when I showed this to my fellow guys in the village, they were not very excited until we got here. They were not excited with the seeds, they're expensive, they were not excited with the farm level. But the minute we started converting a seed, a dry seed, to oil, you could see the excitement. And each got half a liter to go and also try in their homes. This oil can go 18 months without any preservative, without doing anything to it. Of course, it won't be there, it will have been eaten. So we are thinking of scaling out. So let us commercialize at all levels, and we may get somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Waziri, it's your turn as we reflect on what this industrialist, is it inspiring, and industrialist is planning to do. So, Waziri, as we still talk about resilience at household level, I have 2 questions for you. You may want to see how to combine them. And the first one is, about policies and investments. And in your experience, we are asking what policies and investments can foster livelihoods for these rural households that we've talked about. And then number 2, what approaches can drive the necessary changes towards the appropriate policies and investments for resilient households. You get the gist of it, please.
Thank you very much. I will see how I wrap it up. The gentleman who spoke a second last, when he was making a presentation, there's a statement that he made that we already have the policies, and therefore then implementation. He mentioned something about that. But what I see is, yes, because when I was reflecting about this, I realized indeed we have the policies for building resilience. But what I see as the big gap is that we probably do not make an effort to see how this particular policy is impacting in matters enhancing resilience, tracking all that in terms of monitoring and evaluation, and upscaling that which works. So we find programs that worked very well, but did we upscale that? I think that's a gap that I see. Of course, to build resilience, now that we are in the agricultural sector, the area of agricultural diversification, that has already been mentioned, and climate smart resilience, we have to have policies around that, and particularly policies to do with subsidies and on matters inputs, fertilizers, and seeds, and especially what has been mentioned, seeds that are adopted to that area. There is a program that worked very well, the CASA program, which was giving the e-vouchers to farmers. And farmers were being subsidized 90% on year 1 they were being subsidized 60% on year 2 and 40% on year 3, and thereafter they graduate. What they meant by graduating is that now the farmer has to pay 100% for their inputs, and where the inputs was about 19,000 shillings for 1 acre. And we saw in Makueni, for that period of 3 years, 12,000 farmers were able to move and graduate to be able to now fully support themselves. But that program, which was now funded by HIFAD, has since closed. How can we be able to pick this and run with them? I have also seen a very good impact with regard to what we are calling now the last mile fertilizer distribution. We had fertilizer at the NCPB depots, and like in Makueni, we had 3 depots, Kibwezi, Emali, and Tuote. But farmers would spend like 3 days waiting for fertilizer, and they have to carry it over many kilometers. So that reduced on the amount of that. But now we're setting up those satellite depots where we are using our agriculture officers now to give the fertilizer. And we've seen more than doubling in terms of fertilizer use that is happening. And in terms of food production, again, enhanced that, we saw about 30,000 metric tons increase in terms of food production in the county. That, of course, was combined with enhanced rains that we had the last 2 consecutive rains. So those are things that we need to see. How does this continue to get closer and closer to the farmers? In terms of investments in that space, of course, the research and research where we now couple this with the demonstrations for adoption. Research on what is it that grows well here. I like what we've done on matters pigeon peas. CIMIT has done a good job, and now we have what we call M-Pesa, because it is as good as money when you have that pigeon peas, and a number of others that I won't be able to mention. Again, matters support to irrigation. 70% of the world water is used on irrigation. But how much do we use on irrigation as a country? We look at water for drinking, but then we have ignored that element. We are supposed to be waiting for rains to recharge our water sources, not waiting for rains to plant. We have gone to school. So we need to be able to really deliver on that. I visited India, and I have seen every, like 1 kilometer, there's a weir irrigation. So that's something that we need to see how we pick. And of course, extension. I like the model of extension where we have private sector coming to partner to provide extension. Somebody who has an interest in that farmer earning more or producing more, because they will earn more. So when now private sector brings in their extension, they are a very good partner. So that's a model that we need to see how we can be able to promote. The other area where we need policies to support or build resilience in the area of microfinance and the area of insurance. I have seen insurance, crop insurance, I have seen livestock insurance, a bit of crop insurance. People get lost on why have I not been paid. Livestock insurance, it's now come to Makueni. And what I liked, we did a bit of awareness and education. Of course, there was a bit of my animals being profiled. But I saw out of the 6,300 farmers who now got policies for insurance, 4,000 of them did not have bank accounts. Out of 6,300, 4,000 did not have bank accounts, and they opened bank accounts. And so you can imagine how many of our farmers are then excluded. So when you talk about financial inclusion, they are out there. You can't loan them. When they sell their cows, you have no idea where they keep their money. And therefore, what we do to bring them on board, extremely important. Government banked guarantees on rural access to credit, very, very important. And I like what NFECD is doing, matters circles. Because that is really, you see now farmers they have to put in 500,000 shillings before they can qualify now for some support. And with that which they are putting in, then there is ownership. And they are all looking at one another to make sure that this is sustainable. So, and then the other area of regulations that simplify access to digital banking.
Doctor, I know you have a lot to say, but could you just...
Time, we wrap it up.
Yeah, I was here, please.
Right. So digital banking, and then the whole area of course, investments in subsidy matters, insurance. Like on livestock now, we have 80% subsidy. That's how we were able to get more farmers get to this, and to reduce on the level of subsidy as we go along. Then the other area is of course market access and value chain development. Policies that enable us to get better prices, and where as professionals we are able to advise on what is the cost of production for the farmer, so that when it comes to pricing, we are able to give our better prices. And the cost, there's an element we have not been costing, the opportunity cost for that land, and also family labor. A lot of times we ignore that. And of course matters compliance to standards, and investments in the area of cold chain. We have done well on dairy cold chain investment, but and now I find myself in the entire agriculture, horticulture, cold chain development is very weak. That's an area where we need to work on, and also matters agro. And then the whole area of agro processing I mentioned, natural resource, watersheds management, the area of agroforestry is an area where we need to work on. So matters policies and investments around that, matters sustainable agriculture, improved market access, financial inclusion, climate adaptation, and strengthening those social economic areas. I think that's something that would be able to add value. The other question on approaches.
How do you want to go about it? You have 30 seconds to
30 seconds to wrap. Matters approaches, public participation, so that then there is ownership, extremely important. Multi-stakeholder partnerships, very important. And when it comes to PPPs, I like adding a fourth P, where the farmer group is also considered as a partner, not a beneficiary. Then there is a whole data-driven, of course, policy making, the whole area of incentives, I've talked about it, policy advocacy, capacity building, both for those who are doing the policies as well as farmers who make a contribution to this. Flexible financing, I've talked about that, concessional grants, loans and grants, I mentioned that, and of course the area of piloting extension, and coherence in policy where the county, the national, the regional policies, there's harmony on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know, we were warned yesterday by Dr. Ngamba that when conversations are interesting, time flies. I was very sure that I was going to save a lot more time than I seem to have been able to save. And so to aid myself on that journey, I'm going to ask for your indulgence that we do not open the plenary for now, but I kindly invite you to write down your question and maybe present it to the rapporteuring desks for those questions to be recorded, and they will be certainly responded to, because I'm also made to understand that these are presentations and the proceedings of this workshop or this stakeholder workshop that are it's going to be somewhere, and I'm sure those questions, once they're incorporated there, it's going to sustain the conversation. So allow me to bring this to a close. Obviously, we appreciated the 3 previous presenters, so we only have 2 to appreciate. 3 factorial so that I can also sneak myself in there. All right? Can you do that? 3 factorials as they make their way back to their seats. And in the meantime, Dr. Ngamba, back to you. Let's do it. No. Let's start together. Let's start 1. Excellent. Thank you so much. Paul, please.
Thank you, Anthony, especially for including yourself in the 3 factorial. That has eased the work right now. So thank you very much. I want to appreciate everybody in terms of the commitment that you have shown the last 2 days, and especially coming towards the close now. I think in terms of comments that we need to make is that there are lots of stories, and this is a journey. And as we proceed, there are many issues that will keep on arising. I think the challenge that we have is for the policymakers in the room, and for those of us who are in the active space like Felix and the others, and our agripreneurs, is really how to take this up. And I think some of this have been mentioned in some other quarters, especially when we were looking at the I think the presentation that Mercy made in terms of the political economy. That is one area that we hardly go into for obvious reasons, but I think it is something that we may have to deal with in due course, because if relevant policies are not being implemented or even being adopted, there's an issue. There are many things that are not moving just because the policies are not being implemented, actually. And this country has a reputation of having many, many good policies that are implemented elsewhere. I think that's something that we want to avoid, and so that those policies are implemented within the country. For now, allow me to indulge you a little bit so that we can get into the closing session. Mine is to thank you very much for all that we have gone through the last 2 days. And at this point in time, I want now to bring back the program to the director so that he can run the session in terms of closing. So, Professor Bare, this is your chance. Welcome. Let's put our hands together for...
Yeah, so thank you very much, Paul, for conducting the facilitation exercise quite excellently. What I want to do, I want to apologize in advance. The apology runs this way, that allow me to skip the recap and way forward, reason being that we have been together for the last, I think, 7 or so hours, and whatever we got to hear, at least you still have it in memory. What I can promise you is we have summarized the presentation themselves, the recap, and the way forward, and I want to propose that we'll then be able to send this to all the presenters. Reason being, we've had our guest who is supposed to close this conference this morning. It is very rare to find an invited guest attending a conference for the whole day, and he has to travel back to Nakuru. And most of you, I think, will have also to find your ways within the city. And so allow me to invite Professor Bernard Aduda to help us close this conference, and thereafter Dr. Luande to give a vote of thanks. Prof.
I don't know where to start, but let me start by greeting all the participants. Good evening. There are many participants. I couldn't call them sponsors, invited guests, and so forth, government officials, county government. There are many, but You'll excuse my voice. I had some challenges, but I hope I can be heard, isn't it? I deliberately chose to come here very early in the morning to hear from the beginning to the end, because, you know, many times when you stand where I stand, you get a written speech or talking points, and by the time you stand here, all those points have been what? Emptied. So I chose to come here to listen, and whatever I speak is raw from what I got. The agripreneurs, isn't it? One from Lurambi, another one from Kirinyaga, isn't it? I picked from them that for you to succeed in this space, you must be dedicated and be personally involved. If you don't have that passion, then you fail, as I have failed as an individual in that space. Because you want to go there once in a month, twice in a month, or many months after, and you find things are not the way they should be. But is it Felix from Kirinyaga, isn't it? You mentioned about a poorly run university farm next from where you come, isn't it? And that touched me as a university administrator. Patience Mushenga is gone, but I'm not afraid to use the Egerton tap farm as one of those farms, university farms, that are poorly what? Poorly run. And it falls in my docket. In 2022, I was a few months old in Egerton, and we were supposed to select animals to present at the Nakuru show. So the show committee met in my office because I wanted also to know them. But then I said, can I also go with you to the farm so that I can see what? The animals. If I had a nyawinyo, I would have everybody, because they were not good what? The paddocks had those thorns and what have you. So I didn't like it. Poorly run. Yet I saw schools coming to see what? A good university managed what? Farm. Then a few days later, I walked singly just to see around and see the animals. I saw the animals have ticks. And there was a Jersey animal that was very, so I touched and it stopped. So you cuddle, and then I saw a tick. I called the farm manager. Hii ni nini? So he told me, si hiyo ni tick lakini imekufa. So I walked around a little bit, then I saw some structure. Then I asked, this structure is spray race. You know, I've never seen a spray race. By the way, I'm not in your discipline. I'm in the discipline of physics. So I asked, is it working? It is not working, but I've seen what? Ticks. So I asked this farm manager, how many minutes do you take to spray manually what? An animal? About 4 to 5 minutes if you are quick. So I say, let me use 5 minutes. And you have 90 what? Animals. So 90 times 5 is 450 minutes. Divide by 60, almost 8 hours. So you spend a whole day spraying the animals. So you can see I was mad. So as a manager, I went and told my senior, the VC who was here yesterday. And we made a decision to improve what? TAP. So why is the chair of the session that has just ended? An alumnus, isn't it? We'll come to you to make sure that you help us take TAP to where you knew it before you left. I'm saying this, that I'm sorry that we university managers, we have also let the country what? Down. But the country has also let us what? Down, because you don't want to give us resources to pay ourselves, so people do not have the heart to do what they are supposed to be doing. But I want to encourage the lecturers, the professors like Obare. You are in a discipline that you must live it yourself. You must practice what you are what? Teaching. If we don't, then we are sending people away from what? Agriculture and what? Entrepreneurship. I learned about some, I think one of the presenters called it climate information system, you know. Sometime last year I downloaded the Calro Agricultural Observatory platform. And because Sundays when I've maybe come from church or I've not gone anywhere, I watch the Shamba shape up. So I saw that app. So I downloaded it. So I use it to take advantage over my neighbors at home. Because it can give me up to the location level, or is that what you call the ward level, isn't it? I can say that in our location, Southeast Nyakach, it will rain this day. Yeah? So we can plow in what? In advance. Because I'm still salaried, I can use my money to do what? The plowing. Then my neighbors who are still asleep, waiting for the first rain to do what? To come. By that time, me, I'm ready to do what? To plant. 2 weeks difference makes a very big difference in the yield. So I saw that last year, early this season, and in the second season, when we plowed in our family at home, all the neighbors what? Plowed. The only thing I want to ask Calro and some of, let me call them my students, because I taught them at UN and they remembered me and they stopped me here. So I said, now I've earned the gray hair from the meteorological department. Can you make sure that those apps, you come micro, the area covered? Because I've learned to be watchful. Rain, it can rain this side where we are, but the other side of the tarmac, it is not what? Raining. But the app said that in this area, you will get so many millimeters of what? Rain. I would urge you to increase your what? Precision, so that the farmers and other users begin to believe in you. Me, I believe in you. You are not yet there, but you are there, isn't it? We can see you somewhere. If you said 15 millimeters of rain, if we get 5, then I know your prediction was plus minus, isn't it? So I want to urge the meteorologists to help improve the what? That precision, so then we can rely on you fully. I learned so many things by being here. Our eating patterns. My neighbors, same plot of land like this, maize year in, year out, such that the maize gets stunted. But I heard that peace is also important for food production, isn't it? Where I come from, people stay with their 2 or 3 animals in the same house. If you have a 2-bedroomed house, 1 bedroom is for the animals. Cows. Why? Cattle, rustling. So the farmyard manure that used to be used to sustain the soil is what? Not there. So government agencies here in charge of security, that is your job. Soil health. You know, I never knew about soil health until I went to work at Egerton. For all my working years, I was at the University of Nairobi, but cocooned at Chiromo campus. But yet, University of Nairobi has the Kabete Ng'ombe campus, isn't it? So nobody had told us about soil health. Soil testing is not bought into. So the extension workers, extension people around here, please, this is, I think, another area you should go and trumpet, even if it means make it compulsory that people must have their what? Soils tested. So there are many things I've heard, and I could talk, and I don't want to recapture them. They are going to be circulated. But for me, it's a big learning experience. I told some of you we were talking that as a physicist, if I write to USAID to give me some support to develop some agricultural input or some solar systems, they may not hear me. But when my friend shows wilting leaf of cassava, and then they say this is how it affects production, he will be heard, isn't it? And supported. So I want to plead that let us be interdisciplinary. Some of the issues that you touched would require social scientists, you guys. It will also require some of us, the applied scientists, in other disciplines, so that we solve our problems together. Mechanization, you'll talk about it, but if you are not an engineer or somebody from the other side, you will not do the mechanization. So I want to appeal that as you advocate for some of these things to be done, ensure that you visit some of us in our labs and tell us that can we work together. Interdisciplinary approach will help us solve many of our problems. One thing touched me when I heard about trust issues, isn't it? Where do we inculcate that virtue of trust? Is it at the family level? Is it at the college level? Or where do we inculcate what? Trust. Because it emerged here. I would also advocate that we do this not only at home, but we'll try our best to do it at college, where these students meet us. On curriculum, when we send you our curricula as stakeholders to critique, please critique. Don't just correct a word and then what? Send us back. Because for us, we'll convince our regulator that we had stakeholder engagement, isn't it? By showing the emails that we sent you, isn't it? But we urge you to critique seriously our curricula, so that the curricula that we offer to our young people meet the needs of the country. I want to stop there. I want to wish you well, and I hope that the outcomes of this conference we'll see more impact and improvement in our agricultural and food sector. Oh, but was I to close? So then I close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Duda. The workshop or the conference has been officially closed, but I just want to give a vote of thanks, then we leave. So we have been here for the past 2 days, and we want to thank USAID, Kenya and East Africa Mission, together with the USDA, Foreign Agricultural Service, for the financial support to produce the research output that we have seen today, and also to finance this event. We are very grateful for that, and we hope to continue collaborating and partnering so that we can advance agricultural development for sustainable livelihoods and resilience of our people. I also would like to thank Michigan State University and Purdue University, with whom we collaborated in this project to produce the analytics that we have seen and shared. Thank you, my wish, and your team at MSU, Dave and Gilbert, that is not here, and all the partners that we worked with. Thank you. We are also grateful to Egerton University management, led by the Vice Chancellor, and now with us here is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, for the support that we have received from you, and for the time that you have found to come and join us. And to you, Deputy Vice Chancellor, we are very grateful. You have been with us since morning, even since before some of us came until this time. We don't take it for granted. Thank you. We are also grateful to two committee executive members from Makueni, Madam Joyce. Thank you for coming. And Bwana Dawson, thank you for coming. Dawson is the CC Agriculture, Taita Taveta County. We are grateful. Taita Taveta County is Wa and Makueni are the two counties where we collected the data that was presented yesterday by Professor Milu Muyanga, where we were talking about the rise of commercialized medium-scale farms. So we are very grateful. We are also thankful to all the speakers, including the chairs of sessions, the panelists, and the agripreneurs that joined us and made this discussion very rich. We know, as Professor Bare had said, that the outcome of this will be shared, and we'll see where do we go from here based on the outcome that will be shared. All distinguished participants, we are very grateful for your participation, the insights, and the opinions that you have provided till now. Thank you. The IT crew, we are grateful to you, and we hope that we will continue working together to support such events. Tegemeo colleagues, you have worked so hard to organize this. Some of us have had no more than 4 hours of sleep for the last 1 week, but we are not dead, we are alive. By the grace of God, thank you very much. And to Professor Bare, consider some hours off for your people to go and recuperate. Thank you. And thank you, Professor Bare, for the time and the support that you have given us when we were organizing this. We thank you for your leadership. The hotel, thank you. We have had good food, and there is still tea that we will take as we leave. Lastly, I would want us to thank Paul, the facilitator, the overall facilitator, that was in charge of this event, facilitating and coordinating everything. It was fantastic to have you, and we are very, very grateful. And I think you deserved 2 factorials, please. Let's go. Thank you very much, and God bless you. So I would want to request, oh, please come, come.
Well, I wanted to add also my thanks to John for leading this effort. Since May, when we developed the concept note to have this conference, and up till the day before, or till now, he has been leading and spearheading this effort. And so I really want to thank him for making this happen. I personally think it was a very successful event, and I have heard a lot of positive feedback from many of you. So I wanted to make sure I'm the last one thanking him and the team at Tegemeo that made this. I think this is a good example of localization that USAID has been promoting. And so I wish somebody from USAID was here, but I'm sure I'm talking on behalf of them in conveying this thanks on a wonderful event that you have hosted. So I will request all the Tegemeo staff that are here, please rise, and the audience, we salute them by 3 factorial. So please, everybody from Tegemeo, if you are from Tegemeo, please rise. I think you all played an important role in making this a successful event. So let's all give them 3 factorial. 1.
Thank you very much. Now we started with the national anthem. We close with the national anthem. The IT team, please. Let's